We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. Now we're going to do things a little different. We are going to provide an honest look at Ole Miss athletics for the fan, by the fan, and of the fan. That is what we do. Hell be to me. I'm just kidding. Tune in for some Ole Miss sports news. We're going to give it to you straight. Yeah, right now. The POMcast starts now. It happens now. Holy cow. Listen to me. It's starting. Well, it's going to start right about now. All right, welcome to the POMcast on this beautiful Wednesday, coming to you live from the Central Florida studios. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the POMcast. Before we get started, I do want to tell you about the Vault Society. Basically, it is the big push from the Ole Miss Athletics Foundation and requires a 5-year commitment of support. Membership starts at $5,000 a year, and there's a benefit chart on the site. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to tell you all gifts to Ole Miss between now and June 30th will receive triple points. Red points are non-deductible and go towards priority seating. Blue points are 90% tax deductible and go towards parking and non-home ticketed games. That'd be postseason, bowl games, neutral site. We got a big one coming up on Labor Day that fits exactly that bill. If you're interested in the Vault Society, go to give2athletics.com. Again, that is give2athletics.com. Also, if you're interested in watching the show, which you obviously are if you're watching it, you can catch us at The Stephen Willis and at The Rebel Walk. Facebook.com/POMcast or The Rebel Walk on Facebook. On YouTube, Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell, subscribe, thank you. And at Ole Miss, or Positively Ole Miss on Twitch. We also have catch-alls at Willis Digital Media for YouTube and Twitch, Willis Digital Media. Also, we're on audio at Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. Anyway, thank you. Welcome to the POMcast today. And what we have today, we opened up the chat room today. So if you have anything that you want to discuss, you can bring it up there. You can basically comment in the live stream. It'll display no matter what you do, whether you're on YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, however you choose to comment in the thing, it'll pop up and aggregate that. We got a bot for that, and it's on our Discord server as well. So that should be pretty cool to see. So again, my name is Stephen Willis. Welcome to the POMcast on this beautiful Wednesday. Today, I do want to talk about a little bit about Trey Berry going to Boston College. It's not necessarily about him, but about transfers and how it is different than recruiting. And whenever you're going through the recruiting cycle, there's a naivety to players. Definitely, whenever you can catch people's eye with flashy things, facilities and all this stuff that back then to a 17, 18-year-old would matter a huge amount. It just would. But transfers, and especially grand transfers, they're mercenaries. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It is just a single, like you've heard of in politics, they say a single issue voter. Well, this is a single issue recruit. So whichever one they think has the best pitch that can get them to what they want to do, which is probably the league, if we're going to be honest about it, they're going to do it. It's going to be about that pitch. Everything is going to revolve about that. It's not going to be about facilities, winning, anything. It's about getting to the league. And since there's that lack of naivety with transfers, they have the ability to make off the beaten path choices and choices just for them because they've gone through the recruiting cycle before, and now, like I said, they just want to get to the league, and however they do it, they're not going anywhere for enjoyment. They're not going anywhere for the facilities. They're not going anywhere for winning. None of that matters when it comes to a grad transfer. It simply is about what you can do to get them to the league. And if you have the best pitch, you're going to come out ahead. Now, I told y'all a few weeks ago, whenever he entered the transfer portal, that while people were hearing that Ole Miss was leading, that we shouldn't really take that to the bank. And I told the Ben Jarvis Green Ellis story that I'm going to tell again today. Because if you try to cover a transfer because of those factors, exactly what I said, like recruiting, you will fail. You will look foolish. And that is kind of on you. It's everything. Whenever a player picks a school, they want to cover it like recruiting because that doesn't involve, covering it differently, a different avenue. Honestly, it's a laziness thing and trying to fit everything into one box. And now that we have recruiting, we have transfers, we have grad transfers, and JUCO signings, all of them are a little bit different. There's less likely that you can just fit them in the box. Everything is shaped on recruiting because that's the way it was done 20 years ago. We are in a changing world, completely changing. And if you know how to do it and can see what is coming on, you can be quite successful. Now, look, luckily, we have an early adapter as a head coach when it comes to the football program. And obviously with basketball, it's rolling as well with Jamin Brakefield coming in and them hitting the transfer market. So Ole Miss knows where it sits in the transfer market. Ole Miss is in a primo position for the transfer market. With all those 4 and 5 stars that go to the Blue Bloods, you have to keep them happy now. Because if not, if Ole Miss came in second and sitting right there, they're available to poach that player. And that's a good player. Like I said, everything's a system relation. Whenever you get somebody, like there could be guys at Alabama that Steve Sarkisian committed way back when. And they just don't fit into Bill O'Brien's system, even though they're a 5-star. You see it all the time. It's why there's not a 100% hit rate to the NFL. I tell people to understand what you are, understand what you can offer, and understand what can make you shine. If you get those, you will go to a college, and it's not going to matter a bit about winning tradition, a bit about recruiting, a bit about facilities. It's just not. It's about what they can do to help you. And if you can understand that, you will make it to the league probably. There's certain players that just don't fit. Like my example all the time is Troy Aikman choosing to go to Oklahoma under Barry Switzer when they were a wishbone team. Troy Aikman's a Hall of Famer. Why couldn't he win the job? It was such a system difference of what they're asking the players to do that it just materialized. And eventually Troy Aikman went to UCLA, went to the Cowboys, and the rest is history. But that first decision was an incorrect one. And wouldn't you like to see a world where way back then the one-time transfer rule was in effect? Where would Ole Miss be as a program if the one-time transfer rule was in effect? Go back to Marcus Dupree before he blew out his knee and everything. He wasn't happy where he was. He could be at Southern Miss, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. That would have changed the prospects. That could have changed Steve Sloan altogether. What we think of Steve Sloan. The one-time transfer rule could have changed everything. and all of a sudden he moves on. Now I realize that he lost Bill Parcells and all that. I get that. He was on his Texas Tech staff, did not come to Ole Miss. He went to Air Force. I get that. That's not what I'm saying. But the transfer rule has a chance to be a huge evolutional shift in college football. You have the ability to get successful even though you finish second in recruiting on a couple of players, which is where we've kind of lived. There's a bunch of guys that we just finished second on. And, this is going to provide an avenue to allow them to get better, to spot recruit. That's what this is, really. It's a spot recruiting device. You're a little bit weak at the defensive line, you can go out and grab a couple of mercenaries to play on the defensive line. Now, it will change. This will change the relationship between the players and the fans. It just will. As it becomes more selfish, where you go and what you're doing, the fans will naturally look at you in a different way. Now, there are some exceptions to that. People still love Jeremiah Masoli, and he was an absolute mercenary for that 1 year. But I can't imagine. He got Houston Nutt an additional year of coaching. Just Jeremiah Masoli making plays himself. He's a heck of a player, and it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to where this one-time transfer thing takes football, because this and the potential expansion of the playoff is going to lead to more parity in college football. Instead of 3 teams that you can count on every year and then one team alternating to get into the playoff every year and them recruiting to it and get better players than everybody else, and it's just a separation of 4 teams. This is going to bring back together. This is going to be a big deal. Now, but when it comes to transfers, there's not really an insider in Ole Miss football at the moment. Now, you can get information from the basketball program and the baseball program. It looks like it's pretty reliable. There's not much information coming out of the football program. And that's by design. Their job is reliant on being quiet. Would you be willing to lose your job to spill a nugget of information to the media? No, you would not. Especially when after spring training, Lane Kiffin has proven that he would make a change just willy-nilly. I mean, would you make that call? No. So what happens is their circle of sources is, it's not inside the program. So you're dealing with boosters and parents. So now you're dealing with telephone game and second and third hand information at best that could not be exactly right. It's not going to be exactly right. And those guys are the ones that are talking. And so you end up with insiders hitting about 200. About 20% of the time, they're right. So my advice to everybody out there, and you don't have to take it, I'm just a guy, but I will tell you like it is. That's what I do. When I see something, I will speak about it. I'm fairly opinionated when it comes to that. But when a player enters the transfer portal, follow him. That's fine. Definitely follow him on Twitter, because that's where they announce, it seems like, most of the time. But I wouldn't really listen to local media when it comes to recruiting or transfers. I would generally look at the national guys for that. Somebody without, skin in the game monetarily. Those guys, even they struggle when it comes to transfers, because you just don't know. Because real quick before we go to break, I will tell you, when Ben Jarvis Gree Ellis transferred to Ole Miss, in that little interim time between the time that school stopped and school started, because Ole Miss starts around January 20th. Indiana starts earlier than that. So you couldn't really lock him in until he went to an official event. So it was going to be 14 days of waiting to find out for sure if he was going to stay, because he could have gone away during that time frame. Now, that caused like 2 or 3 days of real hand-wringing. They were really worried. Now, they over-worried about things. They're a coaching staff. That's what they do. But, I mean, they were really worried about stuff. I mean, they were going in and you could hear them talking outside, and it was a subject of the day. And what they decided to do, as it got closer and closer and they just kept getting more and more worried, is to move a little bit of the team meeting to lock him in up. Just so you didn't have 4 or 5 hours to do it, just move it up a little bit. And once that meeting happened and Ben Jarvis went to that meeting, he was locked into Ole Miss and the transfer was official. But until that moment, he could have changed his mind and went back to Indiana. And that's what people need to realize. These transfers have a home. They have a place where they can be. Everything they're doing is based off a, for lack of a better word, a mercenary mindset. What can they do for me? And if you get down there and start looking around and don't necessarily see it, or you meet a couple of guys before you're locked in, and it's not exactly what it was portrayed, you can go back to where you were. There's a lock-in period. So if there's no lock-in, you never can count on these guys until it's done. Because they have options. They have other places they can go. They just have to be willing to do it. So, yeah, that's the fun Ben Jarvis little quip from my time down there. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about last night's loss to UT Martin and why that matters and why that doesn't matter. And at the end, you probably shouldn't be wringing your hands too much about it. But we're going to take a short break and come back right after this.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to the POMcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, from the palatial Central Florida studios. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to tell you a little bit before we get started about the Rebel Walk. And they do a fantastic job. Evelyn and her team provide a subscriber level service for no money. None at all. The only investment you have to do is your time, and it is well worth it. They have experts for all these sports that come in and talk. They do whatever they need to do to handle the fan experience. And, of course, they bring in the video aspect to expand your coverage of Ole Miss sports. So go to therebelwalk.com and find out more. That is therebelwalk.com. All right. Last night, Ole Miss lost to UT Martin. I forget the score. It was like 9-7 or something like that. And the cause for concern from the loss. We'll do that first. The cause from the concern would be the fact that you gave pitchers an opportunity to get a little confidence and get going, and a couple of them that you were counting on, that it didn't pan out for them. Now, it doesn't mean it won't ever, but it just didn't during that game. I mean, they gave up a couple of home runs each time. I mean, you are counting on Austin Miller as you get to the SEC tournament. You want to get him right before the regional. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Josh Mallett's the same thing. Give him a little confidence, give him a little boost. And instead of that, it kind of backfired a little bit. I think Brandon Johnson, though, had a fantastic outing. He's an opportunity to get to throw on the weekend now. So that is pretty cool. And I think once we get to Hoover, I mean, you'll see all of them. And I don't think it's a situation where a loss in Hoover is going to matter that much. Now, why it didn't matter is the result has no tangible effect on hosting the SEC tournament or anything. The result means nothing. It's all down to confidence to the individual players. That's why the game's worthwhile. When people completely discount it, they're wrong there. This is why the game is worthwhile, is because you have a chance to build some confidence. You need to throw it because, like I told you yesterday, everything in sports is confidence. If you play at all, whenever you are unconfident, it shows and you will lose that game. So when the confidence goes down, you hit a slump. It's just the craziest thing. And this is an opportunity for them to get right. I mean, that's why that game is on the schedule. Now, as they go tomorrow and play at Georgia, if Ole Miss gets 2 out of 3, all of a sudden they're 5-5 on the season and SEC series with 3 sweeps, and their resume is just nice. I mean, they're doing great. I mean, they have a chance. I mean, they legit chance to hit 19-11 this season. And that would be fantastic. Now, we're expecting somewhere between 17-13 and 18-12, but 19-11 is still on the table, and that's even before Hoover. So that will be something that is interesting to keep your eye on with the baseball team, is the confidence level going into the postseason. You have a couple of pitchers like Jackson Kimbrell last weekend, had a fantastic outing against Vanderbilt. If he can replicate that again, he gets in the bullpen with Jack Doherty. Now, if Brandon Johnson can become another weapon, all of a sudden you have 3 middle relievers that you can use in a series. And that would be extremely beneficial for their team. And I just, like I said, don't hem and haw over the results. Get upset about little individual performances because they're the ones that matter, because they're the ones that's going to affect how we do this weekend. Like, I'm not 100% sure how you put in Austin Miller after I think he's given up bombs in his last 3 appearances. I mean, he's definitely been knocked down on the relief peg. He's reliable. I think he has the most appearances in a 4-year period of any Ole Miss player. But he needs to get right. He needs to recapture that form from the SEC tournament a year or 2 ago. But with Jackson Kimbrell, the freshman, Jack Doherty, the freshman, them making a step helps out the team. And I'm curious about Brandon Johnson after last night. But Ole Miss goes to Athens tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. That's a chance to not necessarily. I think they've locked in hosting at this point, unless they get swept in Athens. But this is a chance to play with seeding. Now, if you can close this Georgia series with 2 or 3 wins and get to that point, all of a sudden you're at 10th or 11th. You're at 9th. And you're in the national seed conversation going to Hoover. So maybe that affects the way you handle it. Now, that first game is going to be tricky as hell. because there's not a lot of pitching depth, and you need it for the double elimination portion of the tournament. So there's a chance that one of those teams could jump up and get you. I mean, just know that going into it, just because of the pitching depth, just not where we expected it to be. And with Gunner being out, that just affects everything. But once we hit the double elimination portion, you can expect a first pitch from Doug, and going from there. We'll see how it handles. They can hit the ball a ton. I think Hoover Met, places like that, and Omaha is very beneficial with the style of baseball that they play offensively. They hit the long ball, but they survive on the gap. And they do a great job with singles and just manufacturing runs. I think it's going to be a problem for teams that are too reliant on the long ball. And that is the situation we're in baseball as a whole. I think in the majors right now, they are ahead of pace for the most no-hitters for a season. I mean, whenever you're trying to go up there and just hit a home run every time, and the pitchers are really good, there are going to be days when you just don't hit the ball. So we are in, basically, when it comes to baseball, the reverse steroid era. This is the pendulum swinging too far the other way. That's what we're dealing with right now. So pitching records are going to fall like crazy. All because everything is about that 3-factor batting. And that's okay. All right. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of time back today. Thank you so much for watching or listening. And we'll be back tomorrow to tell you some more great stuff about Ole Miss football. But anyway, hotty toddy.